So not only is Assassin's Creed Shadows the game and the gift that keeps on giving, but Snow White the movie is also the gift that keeps on giving. And now we have more information because we have reviews that are coming out from critics that are tearing this film apart. Surprisingly, I'm not even kidding. This film is getting absolutely destroyed by the critics, and it is anything but that magical retelling, that return to form for Disney's live action films that some shill accounts on Twitter are trying to convince you that it is. Snow White is bombing on Rotten Tomatoes, and the critics are ripping it apart as the latest Disney remake starring Rachel Zegler is getting absolutely destroyed. So let's get into this article, guys, from That Park Place. But of course, before we do, if you are new here, just consider hitting that subscribe button. I would greatly appreciate it, and like the video to push us out into that YouTube algorithm. So not shockingly, this movie, I should say, is not that great, right? I think most people kind of expected that. Although it's interesting to see that ever since the money started to dry up, all of a sudden the reviews from critics have also decided to get a little bit more aggressive and a little bit more realistic. Right now, the film is getting absolutely destroyed. It is considered rotten on Rotten Tomatoes, but of course, that's going to most likely change as more reviews come in. The Snow White Shill Brigade isn't going to like this. Disney's Rachel Zegler led Snow White remake splattered on Rotten Tomatoes today, and the results were far less flattering than the glowing social media reviews of just a few days ago. The embargo has lifted, and the truth is finally out. Disney's live-action Snow White has officially earned a rotten rating on Rotten Tomatoes, clocking it at a dismal 49%. It is a brutal wake-up call, especially when contrasted with the studio's carefully controlled early social media reactions that bizarrely labeled the film as a triumphant return to form for Disney and called Rachel Zegler a supernova. Now, this whole return to form, this return to form thing, I genuinely believe has to be AI driven, right? I think that at this point, most of these people that are writing these shill articles are using like ChatGPT or something along those lines that is basically using the same exact phrase over and over and over again. It's a return to form, return to form, return to form. That's what they love saying. Anytime you hear return to form, just let it be known that it probably hasn't returned to any form. It's probably trash. This sharp drop in critical reception highlights exactly why Disney delayed lifting the review embargo until just 24 hours before release. The studio knew that the real reviews would paint a far less flattering picture than the hand-picked influencers and Disney's friendly outlets who showered the film with premature praise. But that's because, listen, man, a lot of these influencers, unfortunately, they are bought and paid for. It's not just the traditional access media anymore. Now you have YouTubers partaking in access media. You got YouTubers that are out there that are willing to say whatever the fuck you want them to say, as long as you give them a free trip, free swag, free whatever, money. They don't care, man. They will say whatever it is they got to say, and they will get it out there and try to pretend as if they're being genuine about it. But the critics are speaking, and there is no magic to be seen here. Here's just a sampling of what some Rotten Tomatoes critics have to say. This should be good. So Odie Henderson from the Boston Globes. I had high hopes that Snow White would make me happy. Instead, this dopey remake made me sleepy and grumpy. Dark Sky Lady the Nerdist says, with an uneven combination of forgettable music, bland choreography, and a few genuine laughs, Snow White fails to find and maintain its footing. Jonathan Conan, I don't know how to say that, Toystle.net. This is a film that tries very hard to not take risk or even acknowledge that risk exists. That result is a hodgepodge of awful CGI, contrived new songs, and a story full of plot and lacking in substance. Abe, or Awards Buds, says this reimagining of a story everyone knows lacks imagination, essentially translating a solid text with the least possible creativity and depth. Well, that's why they do the live action remakes, right? Because with the live action remakes, they really don't have to do anything other than just, I guess making whatever made the animated film, put it on screen in a live action format and call it a day. But here's the problem. What they're doing is they're taking the animated films and they're turning them into activist live action films. They're turning them into films that people, when they look at them, they could barely even recognize them. And that's what they want. They don't want you to recognize this as the classic from the early 1900s. They don't want you to look at that and say, oh, yeah, that's Snow White. No, they want you to say, oh, wow, this is an amazing new retelling of this story. I can finally see myself because I'm brown and Hispanic or whatever. That's what they care about. They don't care about actually staying true to the story, because if they did, this would be a totally different kind of movie. But even positive reviews are barely positive. Perhaps more telling is how lukewarm even the positive reviews are. The majority of them boil down to, well, It's not the worst thing I've ever seen. And again, these are people who are getting paid to do this. These are people who are going to lie about it, and they are going to pretend as if because it's not the worst movie they've ever seen, that somehow that is supposed to bump up the score of Snow White to even if it's above average, like slightly above average, like a 55% or something. So here are some of those supposed positive reviews on Rotten Tomatoes. Bob Chipman from Movie Bob Central says a slight but agreeable adaptation that in its best moments offers similar charms to a well-mounted theme park or maybe Disney on Ice. Tanya Lamb from Lola Lamb Chop says good enough for kids. Good enough for kids? Wow. That now that's funny. That's an interesting review. Travis Hobson says from Punch Drunk Critics, it's not quite the fairest of them all, but hardly a poisonous apple either. So it's literally right down the, it's mid, right? It's mid. And I feel like being mid is even worse than being bad or being amazing, right? Because if you're mid, that means that you are so bad at everything that nobody even cares. Nobody cares to even want to have a conversation about your film. Most of the time, they'll just be like, it's whatever. That's actually a really bad kind of place that you want to be in as a movie. Kane Noble Davies from Filming says, it isn't great. It isn't terrible. It's just mid. I got to replace the word fair with mid. With friends like these, who needs enemies? These so-called positive takes hardly sound like ringing endorsements. Instead, they read more like faint praise, the kind you would expect when critics are trying to find something nice to say about an underwhelming product. The equivalent of going to see your friend in a horrible stage play and telling them that was something. That's that's literally what it is, man. These people are out here trying to pretend as if this film is better than what it is, you know. And I appreciate that they're trying to find some level of positivity in this film. I'm sure it's really hard to find considering what Rachel Zegler has been saying about the film. But at the end of the day, man, I would hope that people can tell the difference between an actual real positive review and a review that was made positive just simply to barely get past that threshold between rotten and not rotten. The hype versus reality gap. These Snow White Rotten Tomato reviews are certainly a far cry from the over-the-top praise shouted by early social media reviewers who gushed about Rachel Zegler's performance and positioned the film as a triumphant return to form. Now that the embargo has lifted, it's clear that those early reactions were more about access and optics than honest critique. That's about 95% of this shit. I'm not gonna lie to you. That's about 95% of what we deal with every single day, that they care more about the optics. They care more about the illusion. They care more about that than they do about the actual honest critique of the product and whether or not it's got pros and cons and everything in between. They don't care about that. They just want to tell you what they know that you want to hear, considering that you as a reader of their website, chances are you want to be validated in some sort of social nonsense. And so they're going to talk about that. That's going to be their main focus. Disney likely knew what it was doing by keeping the review embargo tight. It was a calculated move to delay the inevitable flood of honest criticism until ticket sales were locked in. But with Snow White sitting at 49%, the facade has crumbled. So anyway, guys, Disney looks like they are in big trouble with this film. Time is going to tell how good this film actually does, if it actually does well at all. But considering the massive budget and the amount of money they would have to make to break even, I got to imagine this movie is going to be a massive failure no matter what. So anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Hope you did enjoy it. If you did, consider leaving me a subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. Don't forget to like the video, comment, let me know what you thought, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Hypnotic out.